Well, hello everybody. I'm sitting here together with Dan Lochmann from Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Miguel Veiga-Pestana from RB, formerly known as Reckitt Benckiser. Both are the chief communication officers of these global companies. And we've just come back from a session that we have had a forum discussion basically at the Page International Exchange here in lovely Amsterdam. I'm pleased to say, well, I'm Dutch obviously, so I think I can make that point. What was interesting to discuss, and I'll just zoom in on a few of the themes that we've just been discussing, is basically we're talking about corporate branding and the role of corporate brand also versus product brand, which is of course always an interesting dynamic that we are all facing as professionals. By the way, my name is Marc Cloosterman from VIM Group, and I'm the moderator, but also the country chair of Page, and this is why I'm moderating this session. Basically, we were talking about product brand and corporate brand, and Miguel, you brought it up as in a kind of comparison of the corporate brand being the shield and the product brand being the sword in branding. Can you elaborate a bit on that analogy?
Sure. I mean, yes. I mean, to boil it down to something at a very almost superficial level, the point I was trying to convey is that increasingly societal expectations of companies and of both the product brands that we sell are about meeting or addressing these big societal issues. Everything from climate change to water to animal testing to inclusion, how you address these sort of big societal challenges. And because of that, you need to have a kind of corporate brand which can help to be the trust mark that manages that dialogue with stakeholders around those issues at a minimum. And only through that can your product brands continue to dialogue with consumers on the things that they would like to dialogue on, and in a sense the sword being the thing that they're going to fight for with the consumer. And it's a very simple analogy, and in some ways the really smart companies are the ones that have figured out that their corporate brand is also a sword. Yeah, well, I like that, especially that addition, because well, Dan has just been alluding to how they use, how you use the corporate brand. Really, obviously, you are a large B2B business. How you use the B2B brand to enable the business, and basically, you're starting the marketing funnel, but basically the comms or the corporate brand funnel from within the work that you are doing, and then you're basically leading that funnel into the marketing funnel and the sales funnel. Could you elaborate, because the comm stack is really at the heart of your function already?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. Obviously, the CCO is the main person who is in charge of the story of the company, and the story is more frequently now becoming the content. And as you go higher up, it is the larger societal types of issues that you're talking about. And therefore, when you're trying to talk about the corporate brand, you're really talking about, as Miguel was talking about, you're talking about these societal issues which you have to address as a overall corporate brand, but then you're linking those down into specific solutions in our business, brands in yours, but which are the solutions to those issues. So for example, if you're talking about the energy transition, which is one area which is very important for everyone on the planet, how do we decarbonize energy? It's not going to happen overnight. What's the transition? What's the journey towards that? That is the larger story at the top, and that is a societal reputational issue that companies have to think about. But how do you link that down into something which is specific? So for example, using hydrogen in gas turbines instead of natural gas, that immediately cuts carbon emissions to zero and just produces water. So you're using an existing technology to provide a decarbonized thing. So that's now the product. Linking those two together and making sure that you're able to show to customers you are aware of these issues, and you should be aware of these issues. We're all aware of these issues, but what are the actual solutions to achieve results that address the issues? That's how you see the corporate brand going into the product.
I like that.
And can I just say a couple of things to pick it off, and just to kind of keep the conversation going here. I think what's really interesting and what I was trying to convey is that part of what we do increasingly is we're not just the storyteller. We have to help the business become the story, by which I mean we have to play a strategic role in partnering with different parts of the organization to think about what it is that we're going to do in order to be able to tell the story. So it's actually helping the business to transition from just seeing the CCO role as the person who creates the wrapper and who creates the narrative, to understanding that our role is to be the one that helps to guide the business in actually becoming the story.
I understand.
And that's one area that we were talking about in the panel as well, was where you get into, nurturing, which is where you're actually getting real-time feedback from those people who are interested in these issues, or often customers.
Correct. Yeah.
And what their interests have become visible to you as a company, and therefore you can then advise business strategy or product strategy to change depending on those particular interests and behaviors. So communications in a way becomes this feedback loop, which then informs business strategy back again. So, it is becoming more important, and I think if we can all try to use the technologies that we have available these days to achieve that, then we can actually achieve real business change as well.
And I can also see, I tend to speak with the people I work with around the world about brand as the most valuable intellectual or intangible asset, if you want to speak about it more financially. I think, of course, internally that's more a language that appeals to board members because it appeals to the financial speak.
Absolutely.
And that's what they mostly understand best. Do you recognize that internally, your organizations as well? Do you use that type of language? Because the shield and the sword is really a great narrative. I think, again, to your point, I think it's much more value in it than just shield and defense.
No, I agree.
I think it's increasingly coming to the front of the business because of the rise of the transparency through digitalization. Do you recognize that internally?
So look, the answer is of course yes, and but I also think it's getting that understanding that the equity value is different for different stakeholders, and it's not always just a purely numeric or financial value. And then the way that you tell that story is also segmented and differentiated based on who it is that you're telling the story to, and what they are interested in hearing from you. So I think there's this growing understanding and a recognition that, yes, a company like RB, we're famous for brands like Dettol or Durex or Nurofen or household cleaning brands like Finish or Vanish or whatever. We're famous for those kinds of product brands, and those brands have a great story to tell about their efficacy or what they do and how they, in fact, in many instances, they're having a really significant societal impact as well. But you come to work for RB, and you're paid for by RB. And so what is, if you're an employee, you want to understand, well, what is RB doing for me? I want to understand that bigger story of RB, and that's really important if I want to attract the right talent, but as critically, I'm going to retain that top talent. So that isn't just a financial narrative, that's a people narrative. And people and culture are increasingly seen by CEOs and other business and C-suite leaders as these soft assets which are really critical to driving the strategy and embedding the strategy. So it's a nuanced messaging, I would say. There's definitely a financial piece of this. Does it drive growth? Does it drive business performance? But there are lots of other sort of nuanced messages that are part of that, I believe, anyway. Sorry.
That's obviously the employees' trust and the belief that they have in the brand, the pride that they have in the corporate brand, which hopefully should represent who they are and the types of societal issues that they are interested in personally as well, which is why they come to work for the company, right? But also that brand equity is then projected onto the external, into the customers, et cetera, et cetera. But it is difficult sometimes to convince the leadership of the intrinsic value of brand. So especially when you link it to pricing. And then for a company like ours, where you're charging, tens of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars for one product, right? And that may have been, 10%, 5% more expensive than a competitor's. how do you convince that customer to buy our product versus their? And obviously a lot of it is in trust and the actual mechanics of the product itself, but there is an element which is the brand value, which, you know, to break it down into trust or belief or whatever. So trying to link it again to the business story and showing that you can charge more in the end is the way to convince the board, I think.
Thank you. Well, thank you both, Miguel and Dan, for participating also in this recap session.
Enjoyed it.
And thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.